Spoilers ahead for seasons 1 through 4 of Stranger Things and season 5 speculation. In between the eerie, mysterious, charming, instantly iconic worldwide phenomenon known as Stranger Things, and the neon 80s campy horror, comedy, action summer blockbuster Stranger Things 3, and most recently the epic, shocking, sprawling, and supersized Stranger Things 4, exists a sequel. An often overlooked, underrated, overhated, but transformative season that happened, called Stranger Things 2. The season that has become widely accepted as the weakest or worst season of Stranger Things, despite its great critic and audience scores, mind you, is easily my favorite. Over the years, season 2 has gotten a bit of a bad rap. Because of this, I've become a self-proclaimed Season 2 crusader who cannot and will not stand for Season 2 slander. And I'm not making this up. Even the official Stranger Things writers account has referred to Season 2 as the most underrated season of the show more than once. I love everything about Season 2, and it's pretty much the only season of Stranger Things I can say that about aside from Season 1. And I know you're probably wondering, yes, I even love the parts that continue to wrongfully tarnish the season's reputation to this day, and trust me, we will get into that. I've been fighting in the trenches for Season 2 since 2017, and a very common criticism of the season is that nothing really happens. It's filler. It's boring. It's just Season 1, but worse. And if you scour the internet for a consensus, you will quickly find that 9 times out of 10 on any given season ranking video or fan poll, Season 2 is always coming in dead last.
Coming down in last place is probably going to be a lot of people's same pick, and that is Stranger Things Season 2.
Coming in last place is Stranger Things 2.
Coming in at number 4 is Season 2.
In last place is going to be Stranger Things Season 2.
Season 1.
Okay.
Season 4.
Yeah.
Season 3, and then Season 2.
At number 4, I would have Season 2 as well.
At the bottom is Season 2.
In fourth place is Stranger Things Season 2.
Coming in at number 4, we have the second season.
Okay, you get the point. Actually, while I was compiling those receipts to establish the popular opinion here, I found one poll that Season 2 did win. If you could get rid of a season of Stranger Things, which would it be?
I'm really ticked off.
Hey everyone, it's Brittany. As I've said, I love Stranger Things 2 a lot. So over the years, I've collected a decent amount of Season 2 specific merch, which I will be taking this opportunity to model, starting with this simple upside-down 2 shirt. Today, I am presenting to you a video I've been trying to bring to fruition for roughly 6 years. A video I have sat down to write the script for countless times. A video I believe in so strongly. Today, I am here to talk about a season of Stranger Things that just simply does not get the flowers or respect it deserves. This is my personal analysis and defense of Stranger Things 2. When it comes to Stranger Things arguments, there's a subset of people who think that the show should have either ended after Season 1 or turned into an anthology series of sorts. I get that. Season 1 would have been a fine standalone season, which it was basically originally intended to be, but still, a Season 2 didn't not make sense. Season 1 left off with a few pretty big cliffhangers, in my opinion, and while it totally would have been cool to leave those threads open-ended, finishing up the series with a lingering sense of mystery to leave you wondering about it forever, the show and its characters became a pop culture phenomenon. Audiences and Netflix obviously wanted more. And since there were quite a few threads that could be tied up and lore that could be expanded upon, I think a Season 2 was warranted. And I'm so glad we got one. I'd like to remind everyone that the hype surrounding Season 2 was real. Remember that 2017 Super Bowl promo? Iconic. Many people out there might not realize it, but Season 2 totally reshaped the show, all while staying very true to Season 1. That is something I really appreciate and love deeply about Season 2. It feels very much like a natural continuation for both the story and the characters, as well as being a little bigger, funnier, and darker, without losing sight of what made the show so special and a smash hit to begin with. To me, it struck the perfect balance. There seems to be this belief now that each season needs to be bigger and stand on its own in a multitude of ways. Therefore, people belittle, dismiss, or criticize Season 2 by saying it feels too much like Season 1, Part 2. And they say this as if it's a bad thing, when Stranger Things is a show with a continuing narrative featuring the same cast of characters throughout. Subsequent seasons maintaining a consistent tone and identity is kind of ideal. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. I consider managing to keep that tone and identity intact while also pushing the story, lore, and characters forward to be a strength and an accomplishment, not a flaw. I think all of the above is why forgettable is the most frequent word I've seen used to describe Season 2. Because it managed to maintain Season 1's grounded tone and aesthetic, it doesn't stand out as much in people's memories, especially in comparison to the colorful flashiness, 80s nostalgia overload, and comedic antics in Season 3, or the shock value, dramatic sequences, and twists of Season 4. However, I'm of the belief that Season 2 is actually such a perfect and seamless continuation that many viewers and fans of the show take everything it did for granted. So much of what Season 2 added to Stranger Things overall feels like it's just always been there. So I can see how it could be easy to forget that Season 2 actually gave us so much. And trust me when I say that we cannot picture the show without Season 2's additions at this point. Relationship dynamics that are at the very heart and soul of the show, things that have almost gone on to define the show, were either introduced or further developed in critical ways this season. For me, it is endlessly enjoyable to rewatch all of this unfold. We get to meet a mix of beloved and key characters, like Max, Billy, Murray, Erica, Dr. Owens, Bob Newby, and yes, Kali, aka Number 8. When it comes to delivering a slew of new characters, you cannot beat Season 2. Nearly all of these characters are either still on the show to this day, or at the very least, still matter. On the supernatural front, we are introduced to the Mind Flayer, the Demodogs, the concept of being possessed or flayed by the Mind Flayer, and the mechanics of the hive mind, which will remain crucial parts of Upside Down lore moving forward. We get to watch the inception of incredibly special relationships like Hopper and Eleven, Dustin and Steve, Lucas and Max, even the official beginning of Jonathan and Nancy's romance. All of that started here. So the fact that Season 2 has somehow earned the reputation of the worst or weakest season because, it's filler, nothing really that important happened, and it's largely forgettable, is beyond me. Major plot and character development like what we get in Season 2 is quite literally the antithesis of filler. Season 2 is the most essential sequel season of Stranger Things. It is the definition of essential. Absolutely necessary, extremely important. Synonyms: crucial, necessary, key, vital. The fundamental elements or characteristics of something. To me, when we zoom out and look at everything we have of Stranger Things so far, this describes Season 2 kind of perfectly. If you removed all of Season 2's developments from the following seasons, the show would legit fall apart. So I just thought we need to dig into all of this. We need to go over everything new and great and truly unforgettable that Season 2 did, just to be able to really see and understand how vital, strong, and evolutionary Season 2 really was for the Stranger Things franchise. Season 2 is almost laying a new foundation. It's expanding the world, lore, and character dynamics in amazing ways that will have extremely significant lasting impact on the show. For part 1, I want to focus on the upside down of it all. Season 2 introduces what is arguably the biggest villain of Stranger Things, the Mind Flayer. Of course, in Season 4, we meet Vecna, aka Henry Creel, aka Number 1, and it seems like he's the ultimate big bad. But the Duffer Brothers did have this to say about the Mind Flayer in 2017.
The threat that is introduced this season is something that will carry over for more than just this season. So it'll become sort of our main villain, shall we say, for the show.
Of course, plans could have changed between Season 2's inception and now, but the Mind Flayer remains extremely relevant. Through the Mind Flayer, we are introduced to
the hive mind.
Hive mind?
A collective consciousness. The shadow monsters inside everything.
A concept that has since been prevalent in some way in each subsequent season.
It's a hive mind.
This new development begins to challenge everything we thought we knew about the Upside Down and adds a whole new layer of horror to it.
And it's connecting all the hosts.
In Season 2, one of those hosts happens to be none other than Will Byers. People are often quick to call Season 2 a rehash of Season 1, and one of the main reasons for this claim is that Will is at the center of the story and in danger once again. I argue that Will's consistent presence throughout Season 2 makes it inherently different than Season 1, where he's missing the entire time. The dynamics are different. We get to see Joyce's parenting of Will in the aftermath of Season 1 and more of their mother-son relationship. We get to see Will interacting with the party more, his friendship with Mike, which is a significant component of Season 2 that a lot of fans really appreciate. After seeing how worried Mike was over Will's disappearance in Season 1, it's nice to see him care so much for Will in Season 2 and remain mindful of everything he went through last year. It's an aspect of their friendship we haven't really seen as much of since. Basically, in Season 2, we get a better feel of Will as a character, and him actually being around for a change overall feels different and refreshing enough to me. Yes, Will is in danger, but the circumstances are different and the concept is new. Of course, I'm talking about the concept of possession and the Mind Flayer literally, well, flaying minds. Season 1 ends with Will coughing up a slug and seemingly transporting to the Upside Down somehow. So Will still being in danger in Season 2 was to be expected. Obviously, they were going to continue with that thread. In the beginning of Season 2, Will is dealing with what they refer to as episodes, where he crosses over into the Upside Down, just like we see at the end of Season 1. By the end of Episode 3, Will's connection to the Upside Down reaches a new level when the Mind Flayer infiltrates his body, hijacking him to use as a spy. A common criticism is that Season 2 doesn't really get going until this moment, 3 episodes in. First of all, the first 3 episodes are doing a lot of character work, which we'll get into later. Secondly, reaching a new supernatural peak around episode 3 or 4, and the season really starting to gain momentum and feel like it's going somewhere, is not unique to season 2. This basically happens every season. In season 1, episode 3 is when we get the iconic Christmas lights sequence and our first real glimpse of the Demogorgon. It's also when Will's body is discovered in the quarry, which kind of changes everything. Hopper goes to the morgue in episode 4 and fully gets on board with Joyce's theory that something else is going on here. In season 3, it doesn't really feel like things are kicking into high gear until the end of episode 4, the sauna test, where Elle faces off against a flayed Billy, and we find out that a ton of Hawkins residents have also been flayed. And in season 4, episode 3 ends with Max realizing she's in imminent danger, and then... what's episode 4? Yeah, this is definitely a pattern and writing roadmap that they've applied to every season of the show so far. I don't know why people only seem to call this out or consider it to be a flaw with season 2. On the subject of the Mind Flayer's possession of humans tactic, I'd like to bring something to light that might be a little controversial, but I've never really seen anybody point out. Again, this might be controversial, but season 2 is my favorite, so I'm putting it on a little pedestal, okay? I would argue that season 3 is more of a rehash of 2 than 2 is of 1, with some Russians. Instead of Will being our main host, it's Billy. Instead of an army of flayed demodogs, it's an army of flayed residents of Hawkins. Instead of the Mind Flayer being a shadow monster, it takes on a physical form and remains the big bad. And in the end, the goal is to close the gate. Again. But I never see anyone call season 3 a rehash of season 2. And why I think that is because season 3 really separated itself tonally and aesthetically from the first 2 seasons. It's easy to overlook that when it comes to the lore and the plot, it is really taking and recycling from season 2 quite a bit. In hindsight, so much of what we see with Will's possession storyline is not only strikingly similar to stuff in season 3, it's also very similar to what we see with Vecna's victims in season 4 as well. The way they stand there frozen while Vecna enters their minds is extremely reminiscent of Will's episodes in season 2. That's just something interesting to note and kind of feels like foreshadowing now. Something else that's super cool that was subtly introduced in season 1, significantly revisited in season 2, and comes back around in a huge way in season 4, is the idea that thinking of happy memories or listening to your favorite song can help you resist Vecna and or the Mind Flayer's control. We see this during the emotional interrogation scene with Will in the shed, where everyone is trying to reach out to the real him that's still inside by sharing some of their happiest memories of him. And it evidently works! Will doesn't completely snap out of it, but he does resist enough to communicate with the group via Morse code. And before anyone questions why Will would know Morse code, remember that the boys are AV Club nerds. This tracks. Jonathan amps it up by grabbing his boombox and playing one of Will's favorite songs, Should I Stay or Should I Go, from season 1, to hopefully reach him on an even deeper level. Obviously, the biggest example of this now would be the iconic running up that hill sequence with Max, but we even see Billy resist the Mind Flayer in season 3 after Elle speaks to him and triggers memories of his mother. And I feel like this concept has some strong roots here in season 2. There are also notable parallels between Will and Henry Creel. They're both outsiders described as sensitive, they're both artistically inclined, and there's an especially notable parallel where they show young Henry making a drawing of the Mind Flayer that is practically identical to Will's iconic drawing of it from season 2. And I just want to give a shout out to Noah Schnapp's acting this season. That's actually one thing that people do give credit to, usually, when discussing season 2. But I'm gonna say it again. He had to take a major leap from barely being on screen in season 1 to being a major character in season 2 who goes through a lot of traumatizing things, and he just really knocks it out of the park. Something new, but also not totally new, that season 2 introduces is the existence of the Demodogs. Now, some fans aren't super crazy about the Demodogs, but I feel like they're a logical expansion of the Upside Down. As the Duffer Brothers themselves have said, season 1 is akin to Alien, and season 2 is like Aliens.
So we're huge fans of the Alien franchise, especially Aliens. It depends on the year in terms of which one we think is better. Basically, they're both incredible films. Aliens in particular really had a big influence on season 2, especially when we have the soldiers go into the underground tunnel system.
I think it's a cool, subtle enough 80s homage, and it definitely upped the stakes. We learn a lot more about Demogorgons in season 2. We learn a bit about their life cycle through Dustin's little friend, Dart. Which is another plotline people take issue with, but I have a rebuttal for. Don't worry. We learn that Demogorgons might not be inherently evil. Through Dustin's bond with Dart, we see another one of the first hints of emotional or memory-based resistance to the Mind Flayer's control. Dart is so happy to see his dad again and to be snacking on Three Musketeers bars that he's able to stay behind while all of the other Demodogs rush to the gate. And that is where he dies, happily eating his favorite food. Kind of amazing, not gonna lie, and honestly, very emotional. I cried. I loved Dustin and Dart. Anyway, we learn that the Upside Down has been infiltrating Hawkins via an entire underground tunnel system that connects the real world to the Upside Down's Mother Gate. And judging from some Season 5 teasers, it seems like the Season 2 tunnels are coming back into play. Give me all the Season 2 connections, please. I touched on it briefly in my introduction, but one of Season 2's biggest strengths is how seamlessly it weaves all of these new elements into the show. The Mind Flayer, the Hive Mind, the Demodogs, they feel like they've all been part of the lore from day one. Now that we're almost 5 seasons in, they don't necessarily stand out as being new developments unique to Season 2. Largely because these developments have become the backbone for the rest of the series, which is a testament to Season 2's strong writing and world building. If Season 2 was really as weak and void of anything important as so many make it out to be, it would not have been able to provide us with such solid foundations. And these amazingly solid foundations are not limited to the supernatural developments. Season 2 did so much work for the relationships and character development that it is actually insane. If there's one thing that I think Season 2 excels at and should be known and appreciated for, it's character development. A show like Stranger Things basically lives and dies by the characters, and Season 2 was instrumental in making us love them so much more.
We never lose sight of the fact that people love the genre aspect, they love the 80s, they love the mystery, but mostly they love these characters. They root for these characters, and so as we discuss Season 2, which is definitely bigger and definitely darker, it's always anchored everywhere in character.
Nearly all of our main characters are dealing with the fallout and PTSD of the events of Season 1, which allows us to explore more emotionally nuanced storylines with them right off the bat. We get to jump right into the story and really live with these characters more since the base level world building, thank you Season 1, is already established. Yet, another common critique of Season 2 is that it's slow and boring. It's a slow build by design, and it might not have a ton of action compared to subsequent seasons, but that doesn't mean it's not putting in work. It hits the ground running with character building. Obviously, I'm incredibly biased. I'm not even trying to hide that here. But I don't think it's that season 2 is bad or boring or weak. And I can only speak for myself, but it sure as heck is not any of those things to me. Season 2's strength lies in the quiet moments, the character interactions, those grounded season 1 vibes, the acting, that's a big one, the music, that's another big one, and the emotion, which permeates nearly every scene. And that emotion comes from everything the characters are going through. Season 2 is a very dark, but also very heartwarmingly emotional season. And I love that about it. Season 2 makes me cry again and again and again at multiple points throughout the season. And I know that might not be everyone's taste, and that might be a reason why people don't like season 2. Everybody's a little bit more emotional this season. I mean, there's a lot of crying in season 2. I love that crap. I actually want to shout out the Rotten Tomatoes critic consensus for season 2 real quick, because it kind of perfectly sums up how I feel. Stranger Things' slow-building sophomore season balances moments of humor and a nostalgic sweetness against a growing horror that is all the more effective thanks to the show's full-bodied characters and evocative tone.
It's gonna be okay. All right?
In season 2, Joyce and Hopper are both dealing with PTSD and new challenges. Joyce with Will's disappearance in season 1 and now the new danger he's currently facing, and Hopper with the loss of his daughter Sarah, the mysterious danger unraveling in Hawkins, and the new stress of caring for Eleven. In season 2, Hopper spends a decent amount of time with Joyce as she deals with Will's condition, including attending appointments at Hawkins' lab with them, which is a nice touch. He's there when Joyce needs him, listens to her concerns, and is willing to help investigate her hunches, because last season he learned that Joyce is usually right. Hopper shows so much growth in season 2, and him being a quiet confidant for Joyce is a pretty underrated aspect, I think. For one, Hopper respects Joyce's relationship with Bob, even kindly supporting her through her grief after his death. I love when he just goes into her room and sits with her in silence. It's his way of showing that he's there for her without crossing any boundaries. It's such a nice moment and an example of show, don't tell, which is something season 2 does brilliantly many times, and I will point out as we go along. Much like season 1, Joyce is a fierce protector of Will this season. Their scenes together are really special and help flesh out the Byers family dynamic. Some people might view this arc as more of the same for Joyce's character, but I'd be pretty fed up too if my son was connected to an evil alternate dimension and the only place I could go for help is Hawkins' lab. Hopper and Joyce often work as a team in season 2. Their dynamic has some sweet moments sprinkled in as well that sort of hint at deeper feelings beneath the surface. I love how we get to know a little more about their history, like in the scene where they reminisce about their high school days together. By the end of the season, their bond feels very sweet and strong now that they're both dealing with the loss of a loved one. The two of them embracing outside of the snowball is as much a genuine moment of care and friendship as it is a moment setting the stage for the romance that's to come for them in the future.
Promise?
Yes. I promise.
Probably the biggest, most heartwarming addition to the show is the father-daughter relationship between Hopper and Eleven. So far, this is really the only season where we get to see this much of Hopper and Eleven's bond and dynamic, as they're separated off in their own worlds for the majority of season 3, and he is presumed dead until the epilogue of season 4. What we get in season 2 is the foundation of their connection and every heart-wrenching moment that's to come. And what kicks it all off is the final shot of episode 1. The episode ends with a quiet, slow zoom out on Hopper and Elle eating TV dinners. That's it. They chose to end the season premiere on such a soft scene with a deep emotional undercurrent between these two beloved characters, as opposed to ending with a supernatural hook, like Season 3's premiere with Billy being violently taken by the Mind Flayer, or Season 4's premiere with Chrissy's gruesome death at the hands of Vecna. I know that Eleven's disappearance was pretty much the biggest mystery at the end of Season 1, so I understand saving her reveal for the final moment, but the scene right before this is Will being drawn outside by the storm and our first glimpse of the Mind Flayer. They could have maybe switched the scenes and ended with that to hook viewers, but instead they opted to give us not just a shot of Eleven, but this specific shot. A shot of a man who lost his daughter but is gaining a new one, and a girl who never had a real father figure but is finally starting to find one. The emotional weight of this shot always gets me teary-eyed. It's another example of show, don't tell, and it makes you wonder, how did they end up together? How long has she been living in this cabin? It pulls you into their story, almost with the intention of making you care more about them than the stuff with the Mind Flayer. To me, this choice highlights how much the characters really are the central focus and heart of the season. And that's not to say the following seasons don't focus on the characters at all. Of course not. Season 2 just dives in with a primary focus on pushing the characters in fresh, new, and compelling directions. In the official behind-the-scenes companion book, Worlds Turned Upside Down, it states, Stranger Things 2 uses unique pairings of characters to push the storytelling in unexpected ways. You want to shake things up, Matt Duffer says. You want to take the characters that you have, and you want to throw some stuff in there that's going to mess with all of the dynamics in an interesting way. And this scene right here is the official beginning of one of the most beloved dynamics in the series that they will use to pull on your heartstrings later. Hopper is still grieving the loss of his daughter Sarah and begins to heal by taking Eleven in, becoming more protective and nurturing again, but still very flawed. His care and love for her sometimes comes across as overprotectiveness, which stems from his fear of loss. But Hopper comes up with strict rules meant to protect her, and they end up making her feel trapped, and she sees little difference between Hopper and Papa. This tension comes to a head in their explosive fight in Episode 4 after Elle breaks Hopper's rules by sneaking out. One of the best things about Hopper's growth in Season 2 is the way he takes responsibility for his actions. He stops and processes why he's being this way, and actually explicitly apologizes to Elle more than once. One of those times is through a gorgeous and vulnerable moment where Hopper is unknowingly speaking to an empty cabin. I love how this slow-moving shot carries so much weight. Even after their fights and arguments, they're still able to have an honest, tearful, mature heart-to-heart in the Season 2 finale, which is one of the most beautiful and touching scenes in the whole show and a significant bonding moment for them. And let's not forget, this is the season where Elle is officially adopted by Hopper.
Congratulations, Pops.
That's a pretty big development. Another moment where we see how much Hopper has changed and softened is when he comforts a devastated Mike after he discovers that Elle has been alive and hidden by Hopper. It's such an impactful scene and highlights both characters' love for Elle. It's also a great scene to point to underscore Season 2's excellence when it comes to stellar acting, engaging character dynamics, and emotional nuance.
I called you every night for 353 days.
One of my favorite elements of Stranger Things 2, and the one that initially made me really fall in love with the story of Stranger Things, is the relationship between Mike and Eleven. Their bond was very sweet in Season 1, do not get me wrong, but Season 2 peels back new, deeper layers, and I totally bought into it. They weren't even together for the majority of the season, which is another common complaint, but I almost didn't even notice because they are so connected by how much they long to see each other again. And through that longing, we can see just how strong and significant of a bond they've really formed, especially in comparison to Elle's friendships with the other members of the party. Dustin and Lucas clearly care about Elle, but they've sort of moved on, distracted by their infatuation with Max.
We were right. Max is Mad Max.
Yeah, I'm busy.
But
Mike is, of course, not a big fan of Max's presence. You can tell that, to him, allowing Max into the party feels like replacing Elle somehow, and he can't accept that. His anger, moodiness, and irritability throughout the season has been heavily criticized by fans. A lot of people complain about how annoying and unlikable Mike is in Season 2. But they overlook the fact that Mike is a 13-year-old boy dealing with PTSD and depression. Even though Mike is very clearly depressed in Season 2, they don't forget about or abandon his leadership role. It's still clear that Mike is the leader or heart of the party. We see him take control of certain situations, and Lucas and Dustin often defer to Mike throughout the season. The depth of Mike's dedication to Eleven can be seen in his nightly walkie-talkie calls to her, something he's consistently done for 353 days, which adds up to 11, by the way. Separating them for the bulk of the season is also a way for us to feel the weight of the absence the two of them must have felt for nearly a year. Each season only covers a few days in the lives of these characters, so this was actually a smart way of giving us a glimpse into what that year apart was like for them. We're yearning to see them together again just as much as they're yearning to see each other again. This only heightens the emotion behind their reunion in episode 8, which is one of the most impactful scenes of the entire show. But we'll get to that later. Instead, I'm going to talk about their reunion at the Snowball here. It is the conclusion of an arc that started in Season 1. It's the fulfillment of a promise Mike made to her, and it's a payoff for everything they've endured. I will never forget watching this for the first time and squealing with happy tears. It's the perfect ending. Their relationship is a core part of what makes Season 2 so special. And for two 13-year-olds, the show really makes you feel like they are soulmates who will go the distance somehow.
I dump your ass.
Or at least it felt that way at one point here in Season 2. Where they've taken this couple in subsequent seasons has unfortunately somewhat fractured my investment in them, but my love for Seasons 1 and 2 Maleven keeps me hanging on. And of course, there is way more to talk about when it comes to Eleven's character development this season, but I'm saving all of that for part 3 of this video. So yeah, even though Seasons 3 and 4 have left me feeling a little disappointed with Mike and Elle, there is at least, thankfully, another young couple that has only gotten better since their inception.
Max? Hey.
One of the new relationships introduced in Stranger Things 2 is the one between Lucas and Max. They become a big part of the show's emotional core, and once again, Season 2 really laid the foundation for their relationship. After discovering that she is the mysterious Mad Max who beat Dustin's score on Dig Dug, Lucas and Dustin are pretty determined to bring her into the group. Max eventually does express interest in joining their party. However, she's also extremely skeptical of anything remotely related to the Upside Down. Funnily enough, she sort of occupies the same role Lucas did in Season 1, the non-believer and overly rational one. One of their best bond-strengthening moments is during a little heart-to-heart they have in Episode 6, The Spy. Max finally opens up about her abusive relationship with her stepbrother, Billy. She even reveals more personal information about her family and some of her insecurities. It's a moment of real vulnerability for her, and Lucas is there to listen without any judgment, and even builds her up a bit.
You're nothing like your brother, okay? You're cool. You're super smart. And you're like totally tubular.
All of the little moments they share in Season 2 are so important. They even make more than one point in season 4 to show just how much these moments mean to Lucas and Max. Whether it's this cute little callback to their first interaction.
That's presumptuous of you. That's presumptuous of you.
Or Max literally choosing the snowball as her happiest memory of all time and safe place to hide away from Vecna. Season 2 matters so much. By the time we get to season 4, their relationship becomes even more layered, but the foundation laid in season 2 is part of what makes their season 4 scenes hit so hard. And the seeds of Max's emotional complexity in season 4 are firmly planted here in season 2. I do want to quickly highlight the basis of Max and Billy. Season 2 is really the only time we truly see Max and Billy's relationship in its raw, unfiltered state, before the Mind Flayer takes control of Billy in season 3, and before his death casts a shadow over Max in season 4. Like most of what season 2 delivers, their strained dynamic is foundational, not just to Max's character, but to the emotional weight of future seasons. Billy is aggressive in nearly all of their interactions in season 2, but they wrap up the season with a moment where Max stands her ground, warning Billy to leave her and her friends alone. And it's actually a callback to a moment earlier in the season.
Say it.
Say it!
Say it! Say it!
I understand.
To me, this could have been the start of the ideal life Max imagines in her bittersweet letter at Billy's grave. The end of season 2 could have been a perfect jumping off point for Max and Billy to work on mending their relationship a bit, which we unfortunately didn't get to see any of before Billy's possession in season 3. That's personally something I would have preferred to see instead of the Mrs. Wheeler plotline. The scene of Billy and his father is a good example of Stranger Things achieving a lot with a little. This scene basically told us everything we need to know about why Billy is the way that he is. As soon as I saw this scene, I was like, oh, okay. It doesn't excuse his behavior, but it is an explanation. Circling back to episode 6, The Spy, a scene I think is a huge standout in season 2 is the junkyard scene. It's a masterclass in developing and establishing so much in just a few tense and exciting minutes. Lucas invites Max to the junkyard to offer concrete proof of everything he's told her, officially exposing her to the horrors of the Upside Down. We get more hints of the romance that's to come for them when they're shown holding hands in fear, which affects Dustin, who has a crush on Max. Dustin later tells Lucas that he could feel
the electricity
between Lucas and Max, which is something Steve taught him about in an earlier conversation. Speaking of Steve, this scene is the moment where he fully steps into his role as the kid's protector, when he faces off against Dart and a few other demodogs. Dustin's admiration of Steve begins here when he declares,
"He's awesome."
This grouping of Steve, Dustin, Lucas, and Max was so good, they put them together again in season 4, and I couldn't stop getting season 2 flashbacks, especially with Steve in that dang jacket that's so similar to his season 2 look. And I mean, come on now. That final shot of Steve with the bat slung over his shoulder gives me chills. It feels like with this final shot of him, the Steve we know and love has officially arrived. Season 2 Steve is peak Steve to me. His friendship with Dustin plays a huge role in that and has gone on to become arguably the most iconic and beloved dynamic on the whole show. And you already know we need to talk about it.
How do you know if it's not just a lizard?
Because his face opened up and he ate my cat.
Steve's character definitely took the first turn towards redemption, so to speak, at the end of season 1, but do not get it twisted, it was season 2 that turned him into the fan favorite.
Kind of me and Nancy have this falling out, and her and Jonathan go off and start to do this thing. And then I think they were kind of like, well, there's not really anything for Steve to do. He's kind of, you know, at this point, kind of not really serving the story. Thankfully, they kind of thought, it would be crazy or some sort of odd couple moment to put me with Gaten, who plays Dustin. It's pretty random. I mean, we just intersect paths going to, I think, the Wheeler's house, and then kind of were, spurred off from there back into the story.
It was really his unlikely friendship with Dustin that propelled his character into completely new territory and helped him unlock some new characteristics. Because now when we think of Steve, he's the guy who's super awesome, lovable, and open to befriending or even dating people he normally wouldn't. Like Robin, who he initially falls for romantically before being the best, most chill friend ever when she comes out to him. This most likely never would have happened if it weren't for Dustin's influence. The creation and foundation of this transformative friendship was all set in stone here in season 2.
I mean, it was just so fun and such a different relationship than the Steve and Nancy thing. I got to sort of play this big brother role and kind of tap into something else for Steve. And I think that ended up really shaping the character as things went along.
Yeah, it definitely shaped the character as things went along, all right. What is basically Steve's moniker at this point? The babysitter. All the memes, all the merch, all the little meta mentions of it in the actual show to this day.
Always the goddamn babysitter.
It's all because of season 2. Part of the way they construct Steve to be more likable in season 2 is by tearing down his King Steve reputation and making him an underdog following the arrival of Billy, a new Hawkins High king who is 1,000 times worse than Steve ever was. Their fight in season 2, episode 9 is so intense and gripping. Billy literally would have killed him if Max didn't intervene, which was definitely the moment Mike decided she is indeed party member material. Now for Dustin. This is where my rebuttal for the Dart storyline really comes in, because that storyline helped lead us to Dustin and Steve. We eventually see that Dustin did form a real bond with Dart in the end, which is why he was so adamant about keeping him at first. But people overlook that another one of Dustin's main motivations for keeping Dart, despite the potential risks, is his crush on Max.
You kept something you knew was probably dangerous in order to impress a girl.
A lot of fans criticize the whole Dart thing as being out of character for Dustin, that he's smarter than this and would know better than to keep a creature that is most likely from the Upside Down. But he is a whole year removed from the events of season 1, and even though Dustin is very smart for his age, he's still 13. A 13-year-old nerd at that, and he's not immune to the mind-altering sensation that occurs when you have a crush in middle school. Think back to your middle school crush. I don't want to, but yeah, it can make you do some crazy and irrational things, okay? I also want to point out that the whole Dart storyline only lasts for 2 episodes before Dart molts and eats poor little Muse, which was absolutely scarring to witness for the first time. As soon as Dustin is aware that Dart is a baby Demogorgon, he hatches a plan to kill him. Dustin was only adamant about keeping Dart when he was tiny and didn't seem like a threat at all. Once Dart was Demogorgon confirmed, it was game over. And this is where he ends up running into Steve and enlisting his help when no one else is around. Dustin's search for help also gave us this classic interaction between him and Mr. Wheeler, by the way.
Son of a bitch, you're really no help at all, you know that?
Language!
I don't know about you, but the whole Dart situation, I'm letting it slide. Dustin is a kid. Steve and Dustin's bond develops quickly over the course of just a few scenes in the back half of season 2. Another example of Stranger Things being able to achieve a lot with a little, largely due to the sharp writing and fantastic natural performances from Joe Keery and Gaten Matarazzo. They help make this out-of-left-field pairing feel like such a seamless addition to the show. Their interactions are hilarious, of course, but they're also super heartwarming. The humorous moments between them don't feel solely comedic to me or over the top, though. They're endearing here, and they help show a softer side to both of them, especially Steve, and help define their dynamic. Steve gives Dustin the confidence to put himself out there more, even if things don't exactly go as planned. Oh, that snowball sequence had me bawling when I first watched it. And speaking of the season 2 finale, it also gives us a quietly poignant moment in the whole Steve, Nancy, Jonathan love triangle. Steve's glance at Nancy through the gym door window is one of the most evocative shots of the whole season for me. Paired with that swelling part of Olivia Newton-John's twist of fate, ugh, chef's kiss. Earlier in the episode, Steve tells Nancy that he's basically accepted that she didn't choose him, and he understands that she'd rather be with Jonathan. But yeah, that glance at Nancy, followed by his defeated sigh as he drives away, is the last we see of Steve in season 2. And it's another brilliant example of show, don't tell. Everything is written on his face and elevated by the fantastic song choice. It's a moment of bittersweet acceptance that shows Steve's growth as a character. He's upset that he lost Nancy, but he gained this awesome new friendship with Dustin that's also fulfilling for him. And as he drives away, it feels like he's accepting this change, that he knows he's gotta move on. Steve's story, like so much of season 2, is seamlessly done. And by this final shot of him, it is crazy how much we love him and are rooting for him now, which just goes to show how much he's truly transformed from the start of the season. Seeing him interacting with Dustin so naturally, a character he literally had nothing to do with only 4 episodes prior, is yet another testament to season 2's strong writing and performances.
Let's burn that lab to the ground.
One of season 2's most criticized arcs is Nancy and Jonathan's pursuit of justice for Barb. Detractors often dismiss it as fan service, and nothing more than a response to the Justice for Barb memes that exploded after season 1. But dismissing it like that ignores the emotional core of Nancy's journey. Barb was Nancy's best friend. In a season where many characters are grappling with PTSD and grief, Nancy's determination to hold Hawkins' lab accountable for Barb's death is how she's dealing with it, especially since she feels some responsibility for what happened. We know that Barb died, but the residents of Hawkins don't. Sure, they framed it to make it seem like Barb ran away, but her family would still be considering this to be a missing persons case. That's awful and does need some type of closure. Barb's parents are selling their house to afford an investigator, for God's sake. Someone needs to help them put this whole case to rest, and it might as well be Nancy. This plotline also marks the beginning of a defining element of Nancy's character: investigative journalism. This is the first time Nancy takes on the role of investigating something with the intention of reporting it in the papers. Nancy's journalistic career path has its roots here in season 2. What else is new? Season 2 is that season. We see her go on to work at the Hawkins Post in season 3 and for the high school newspaper in season 4. Jonathan joins Nancy on her mission not just because he cares about her, but because he too has reason to hold the lab accountable for what happened to Will. And together, they help expose the lab's wrongdoings and bring some much-needed closure to Barb's family. Although Jonathan doesn't play a super major role in season 2, his presence is still very much felt as a warm, supporting character who helps flesh out the Byers family dynamic even more. He shows a lot of compassion, especially when it comes to supporting both Nancy and Will. We get to see a little more of Jonathan's big brother role in season 2. It's nice to see him interacting with Will and seeing how concerned and protective he is of him in the aftermath of season 1. He even refers to Will as his best friend at one point in a really sweet standout scene between them in episode 1. He does also play a key role in the shed interrogation scene we talked about in part 1, helping break through to Will and leveling up the lore by playing his favorite song for him. A particularly gut-wrenching moment is during Will's exorcism in the finale. Jonathan is an emotional wreck at the sight of Will's pain. That moment where he turns to Nancy for comfort and to shield his view always gets me. By the time the Mind Flayer finally leaves Will's body, the feeling of relief and love among Joyce, Jonathan, and Will is so palpable. As soon as they're sure that Will is no longer part of the Mind Flayer's army, Jonathan does have a pretty epic line in one of my favorite moments of the season.
Chief, do you copy?
Yeah, copy.
Close it.
Jonathan and Nancy's subplot also introduces the character of Murray Bauman, a freelance investigative journalist who has taken on Barb's case. Murray is a character that most viewers, judging from social media at least, thought was pretty funny right away and immediately embraced. I actually liked Murray in Season 2 and thought he was a fine minor comedic addition. But in my opinion, he's a case of a character where less is more. Which is why his small role here in Season 2 works for me. He has since gone on to become way too comedic to the point of slapstick. But I know plenty of people out there still love Murray to this day, so I thought it was worth pointing out that Season 2 is the season that brought him into the fold. It's also interesting to note that Murray's original theory regarding Barb's disappearance is now foreshadowing for Season 3.
I'm talking a full-on Russian invasion right here in Hawkins.
Murray was also the catalyst that helped Nancy and Jonathan confront their romantic feelings for each other, which had been bubbling up ever since Season 1. It's honestly a little creepy considering Jonathan and Nancy are high school kids and Murray is a grown man urging them to sleep together, but that's how it happens. I do remember Jonathan and Nancy getting together feeling like a huge romantic relief back when I first watched the show. I was definitely rooting for them. And the whole love guru thing kinda becomes Murray's shtick. They have him do it all over again with Joyce and Hopper in Season 3. In addition to Murray, there are a few other significant additions to the show this season.
I'm Newby, superhero.
Bob Newby is one of Season 2's most beloved new characters, and has since gone on to be a prominent part of Joyce's character arc. Bob is a kind, earnest person who provides a sense of normalcy and stability that the Byers family needs after the events of Season 1. At first, Bob is kinda designed to make us a little distrusting of him. His niceness seems a little too good to be true, especially after he connects with Will and offers him some terrible advice. But we soon learn that he has no ulterior motive at all and genuinely always means well. His innocent optimism is refreshing and kind of funny in the midst of so many traumatized characters. The amount of times I reference
Some people like Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers. I love Kenny Rogers.
is a lot. You'd be surprised by how many opportunities have arisen for me to make a reference to that. Bob becomes a hero of the season in Episode 8, The Mind Flayer, which is one of the greatest episodes of the entire show. He ultimately sacrifices himself in order to help the gang escape from a demodog-infested Hawkins lab, and his death really impacted the characters who loved him. Bob and his legacy continues to impact Joyce in later seasons. We see her lonely and still mourning and missing Bob in Season 3, and they even show a clear flashback and parallel to Bob's death in Season 4 when Hopper is chased and attacked by a demodog in Russia, literally spelling out for us the lasting impact Bob's death and the events of Season 2 have had on Joyce. This is what I mean when I talk about Season 2 contributing heavily to the emotional weight of future seasons. And even visually calling back to Season 2 in general here. All of the TV surveillance screens immediately brought me back to Season 2, Episode 8.
I'm on your side. I need you to trust me.
Dr. Sam Owens is another new addition to the show this season, who is also designed in a way that makes you question whether or not he's a good guy. His characterization really keeps you on your toes as a viewer. Unlike Bob, who is simply good through and through, Owens does ultimately exist in more of a morally gray space, where he works for the lab but still tries to do whatever he can to help. Paul Reiser was a fun casting choice this season, especially with Season 2's homage to Aliens, which he starred in. I also love that in the end, Owens follows through with Hopper's request for Elle to live a normal life. He's the one who gets her the birth certificate, giving her a fresh start as Jane Hopper. I don't have that much else to say about Dr. Owens, but he's another Season 2 addition that is still involved in the plot as recently as Season 4.
Erica, is Lucas there? Where is he?
Don't know, don't care.
Lucas's little sister, Erica Sinclair, was first introduced in Season 2 as well. She's another example of a character similar to Murray, who made the most of their brief screen time and stood out as a welcome comedic addition. Of course, everyone thought Erica was hilarious in Season 2, so they went even further with her comedic moments in Season 3. Really tipping the scale from the perfect balance of unobtrusive comedy that I think they struck here in Season 2. That being said, people do love Erica. I mean, you can't spell America without it after all. Her signature quirk of calling everyone nerds was established here.
Then tell your little nerdy friend to shut his mouth.
And she helped flesh out Lucas's home life more, which is something we also get to see for the first time in Season 2. Finally, there is one more major new character we have yet to discuss, and that is none other than the infamous Kali, aka Number 8, which brings us to what I consider to be the main event. So hold on tight. You haven't seen how passionate I get when I talk about Season 2, Episode 7, The Lost Sister, is so misunderstood. Much like the characters featured in the episode, it is an outcast. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The episode about outcasts is the episode everyone casts aside. I know I'm in the minority when I say that I love this episode. My friend Lydia and I actually went as Kali and Punk 11 for Halloween in 2022, which we're still quite proud of, and it was a costume that I had personally been wanting to do since January 2018. Note the iPhone 5 SE. So yeah, let's establish that I genuinely love it, and I always have, since the first time I watched it. I know many of you watching right now probably think that I am embarrassing and a complete idiot with no taste, or just trying to be different by saying this, but please, hear me out on this one. This episode is truly one of the big reasons why Season 2 is my favorite season of the show. But it's also, unfortunately, kind of the biggest reason why Season 2 is consistently ranked last or considered to be the worst. Due to the initial visceral negative reaction viewers had to it when it did not resolve the cliffhanger at the end of Episode 6, it has become one of the main things, if not the main thing, that people remember Season 2 for. Episode 7's reputation has almost overshadowed Season 2 as a whole, and it's gotten to the point where the majority believe Season 2 must be the worst or weakest season by default because of it. It's just wild to me that one episode is continuing to drag a very competent, crucial, and momentous season down that much. An episode that most people, judging from how often they brag about it, routinely skip and have not even bothered to revisit since the first time they saw it. To greater understand the importance and function of The Lost Sister, we need to zoom out and actually look at it in context, because for the last 8 years. It has been singled out and unable to shake its bad reputation as a pointless filler episode that makes no sense. It's criticized for seemingly coming out of nowhere, having nothing to do with anything, and ruining the tension and momentum of the season. The general consensus is that there's absolutely no real reason for this episode to exist, and it is so terrible, useless, and irrelevant to the story that you don't even need to watch it at all. Since this is an in defense of video, I'm going to try to counter-argue all of those complaints. And I'm going to try to explain to you why I love this episode, why it works for me, and why I think it's one of the most important episodes for the character of 11, and undoubtedly the most overhated episode of Stranger Things.
Not stupid.
From the start of Season 2, we see that 11 is on her own. She's isolated for the majority of the season, which is another reason some people dislike Season 2. But I think her isolation gave her the space to start exploring and learning new things about the world and herself. In a 2017 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Matt Duffer is quoted saying, "Eleven's relationship with the boys was a big part of why people loved the first season, so it was a little bit scary to lose that and say, no, we're not going to do that this year. But we felt that if we were going to do another season, we would want it to feel different, and we would want to try other things, whether they work or not, instead of rehashing what we had done before. We wanted her to have her own journey of self-discovery in a way that wasn't tied at all to the boys. We wanted her to go out on her own." She grew up in a laboratory, and in Season 2, she's discovering that there's a whole world out there that she really knows nothing about. Outside of the lab, she's lived in Mike's basement, the woods, and Hopper's cabin. That's it. And at this point, she's fed up. She wants to see if there are any other options or paths for her in life, other than being confined to one space for all eternity. Her boundary pushing starts off relatively small when she sneaks out to catch a glimpse of Mike in the front half of the season, showing us early on that she's already rebelling against Hopper and his rules. Her rebellious nature, or emo phase, as many refer to it as, was there the whole time, not just in Episode 7. In fact, everything was building up to Episode 7. It is the culmination of her Season 2 arc. Early in the season, she begins to ask questions and seek out information about her past to help her make sense of her existence, like in this heartbreaking flashback with Hopper.
Mother.
Do I have a mother?
Yeah, of course you have a mother.
Where is she?
She's not around anymore.
This girl has no idea where she comes from. She deserves answers. Some people complain that it's boring to watch Elle figure out some stuff we already know, since we met her mother, Terry Ives, and her Aunt Becky in Season 1. But this season is about Elle's personal journey and her perspective, and I think the emotion that comes with her discovering all of these things is so compelling and deeply moving to watch. There's one specific scene where she discovers a box of Hawkins' lab files. This is when she finally learns of her birth name and her mother's identity. She locates Terry in the void, and in this moment, she realizes that she's been lied to by Hopper, that she does have a living mother that she's been kept from, meaning there's a whole other life that she never got to live. The utter anguish in Millie Bobby Brown's performance here makes me burst into tears every time. And this is her breaking point. She chooses to leave to go find her blood family, which is naturally where she assumes she must truly belong. Upon meeting Terry and Becky in Episode 5, she learns that although her mother is alive, she's only a shell of a person. And it's here that we learn what actually happened to Terry in yet another genuinely heartbreaking sequence. She takes Elle into her dream circle, which is the explanation for the strange words she mumbles. Elle was stolen from Terry. All Terry wanted was to raise and love her daughter, and instead, her mind and entire essence was destroyed by Dr. Brenner. It is absolutely tragic. In Terry's dream circle, we are introduced to the Rainbow Room, which becomes a prominent fixture in Season 4, and we see another Hawkins lab test subject for the first time. Elle is intrigued by the image of this girl and feels like her mother must have shown her that memory for a reason. She also realizes that this girl is essentially the next best thing she has to blood family, so she tries to find her.
I can make people see or not see whatever I choose, but it doesn't have to be scary.
The cold open of Season 2 is literally Kali and her gang. We're introduced to them right out the gate. Yes, it takes a little while to circle back around to them, but they did not randomly appear for the first time in Episode 7. The reveal of Kali being another Hawkins lab test subject in the first 3 minutes of the season is awesome.
Boom.
I was immediately on board the first time I watched it, because this is an expansion of the world. That's what you want from a second season, right? You want them to branch out, try something new, peel back more layers. With the reveal of Kali's powers and number 8 tattoo, she is immediately and intrinsically part of the story and lore of Hawkins Lab. And Hawkins Lab is a central piece of the Stranger Things puzzle. She is directly connected to 11 because of this, who is essentially our main character, and that's not even her only connection to the story anymore. Upon rewatch with the knowledge of Season 4, Kali is even more interesting because she possesses the power of mind manipulation and illusion. Her abilities are very similar to someone else we know now. Because other than 11, Kali is Vecna's only other living sibling that we know of, and she has inherited some of his powers. This episode does in fact have to do with the overarching story of Stranger Things. And contrary to popular belief, Season 4 did not retcon Kali's existence. It actually maintained continuity with Season 2 by addressing the fact that Kali escaped prior to the massacre. They told us this in a line from Henry that a lot of people missed.
This would have been when 8 was still here.
Kali is such an intriguing and complex character to me, because now with the existence of Henry, we get to see the full spectrum of how the test subjects could turn out. Elle is the good guy test subject, Henry is the super evil test subject, but Kali exists in a very layered, gray area somewhere in the middle. She seems to share a lot of the same philosophies as Henry. They had him impart some of the same advice to Elle in Season 4.
I want you to find something from your life, something that angers you.
He had found his strength in a memory from his past, something that made him sad, but also angry.
I feel like this opened a can of worms because it kinda implies that Henry probably shared this advice with Kali as well before she escaped. I could be wrong, but I don't think Kali is an evil person, and I don't think she wants to hurt 11. Yes, she's obviously manipulating Elle to help her carry out her mission to eliminate former Hawkins lab employees, but I think she also genuinely believes that this is the way they will be able to heal and find peace, and she wants Elle to experience and achieve that peace too. She just traveled down the wrong path, which I think is the other meaning of the lost sister. She's not only long lost in Elle's life, she's also lost as a person and has developed a very warped way of dealing with her trauma.
If you wanted to show mercy, that is your choice. But don't you ever take away mine.
In The Lost Sister, we see Elle start to make sense of the world and her place in it. She begins to figure out who she really is as a person. A lot of people give credit to Season 3 and her friendship with Max for this. Elle experimenting with her fashion and making her own rules is all good and important, of course. But Season 3 is not the first time she's done something along these lines. In Season 2 and Episode 7 specifically, we see Elle make massive decisions for the first time that help define her character. Elle explores her morality in this episode. She decides what is right and what is wrong. Many people argue that they could have had Elle discover these things about herself in a different, better way, and that Kali didn't need to exist. But I say, having Elle link up with someone like Kali, someone like herself that she can relate to, was the perfect move. Elle is an anomaly among her Hawkins friends. As close and comfortable as she is with them, they'll never be able to understand her the way a fellow superpowered Hawkins lab escapee can. There's an immediate bond between Kali and Elle. I adore the way they embrace each other as sisters without a second thought. It's a truly beautiful moment for both characters, but especially Elle.
Season 2 is a lot about her searching for her place in the world and where does she fit. So this idea of her finding someone her own, which is, what she calls her sister, was an exciting idea for her, just to be like, oh, maybe this is my place in the world. So, and I think Millie did a great job, and Linnea too, when they have that sort of first meeting in our Warriors-esque warehouse, where you see this sort of hope for the first time of, oh, maybe this is my place in the world.
Because you have to remember, Elle spends most of season 2 trying to define the word home. She wants to give it a meaning. She wants to understand how it truly feels to belong somewhere. So many people have told her that her home is with them.
I'm going to take you back home.
I'm happy you're home.
It's your new home.
She always believed that you'd come home.
And now that she has reunited with Kali, she starts to consider that maybe her home is with her. And Kali starts to feel like Elle is the missing piece she's been longing for.
I think this is your home. Home. Yes.
Again, a very beautiful moment. And I want to shout out the soundtrack here. The song is called Outside the Realm by Big Giant Circles. It's one of the most gorgeous and ethereal pieces of music that they've ever used on this show. They actually use it earlier in episode 2 as well, and I just love it. Elle quickly learns that Kali and her gang spend their time killing the bad men. And the idea initially seems a little appealing to Elle. She figures she's already killed people. And she harbors a lot of anger and resentment, so taking it out on the bad men, who they believe to be the source of all their trauma, makes sense. Before embarking on their first mission together, Kali teaches Elle to channel her anger in order to strengthen her powers, in yet another heart-wrenching sequence where Elle breaks down and releases all of her complex emotions while moving the train. At first, Elle is having a good time with Kali and her gang. The rebellion and sense of freedom and validation that Kali provides her is an outlet for everything she's been feeling and struggling with all season. But everything changes when Elle is faced with the opportunity to kill a man named Ray Carroll, who was partially responsible for destroying her mother's mind. One of the biggest revelations in this episode is delivered by Ray as he pleads for his life.
Papa is gone.
No, he is alive.
And it makes you wonder, is he telling the truth, or is he just saying anything to keep living? This waters the seed that Dr. Brenner is still out there, which, of course, in season 4, we discover to be true. Elle is clearly having second thoughts as Ray continues to plead, but Kali is essentially the Palpatine to Elle's Anakin in this scene.
Do it.
Elle is being tempted by the dark side here as she literally force chokes Ray. This is just one of many Star Wars allusions and references in this episode, by the way, and we'll go over the rest a little later. Unlike Anakin, however, Elle decides not to cross this moral line when she notices a photo of Ray with his daughters. She realizes that by killing Ray, she would be ruining the lives of other children, just as the bad men ruined hers by hurting Terry. This is when she decides that killing someone for reasons other than self-defense is wrong. This is not who she is, and it's not how she wants to use her powers. Kali and Elle have a conversation that brings Elle to a crossroads. But Kali takes things a step too far by conjuring up a vision of Dr. Brenner in order to push Elle to stay with her and continue to seek revenge. This is also foreshadowing for season 4, where Elle does in fact need to face Brenner again. You can see that Elle is emotionally torn. Part of her wants to avenge her mother, stay with her sister, and heal her wounds. But she's also starting to learn and decide that Kali's path is not the right one. She misses Hopper, Mike, and the rest of her friends, so she checks in on them in the void, where she discovers something is very wrong back in Hawkins. By meeting a fellow superpowered girl like Kali, Elle is able to see very clearly how fundamentally different they are. They're two sides of the same coin. Kali is an example of how Elle could have turned out if she didn't find people like Hopper and Mike. And Elle realizes how lucky she is to have found them after spending time with Kali and her gang. People complain that the gang is annoying, one-dimensional, and unlikable. That's because the gang was not necessarily supposed to be likable. Aside from Mick and Funshine, at least.
I stay calm. She's just a kid.
I'm in. Miss J.
I like them. Elle realizes that her friends need her. That being able to help them is truly a gift that she possesses, and using her powers for good is how she'd much rather be spending her time. The moment where Elle decides to return to Hawkins and leave Kali, who she still considers to be her sister, is one of the most emotional scenes of the show for me, honestly, and I never see anyone talk about it. It's just such a fantastic and defining moment for Elle, and always makes me shed a tear.
There's nothing for you back there. They cannot save you, Jane.
No. But I can save them.
I can save them is one of my favorite 11 quotes. I love Millie's delivery and those iconic flashbacks to season 1. As Elle runs away, you can clearly see that she is emotional. I've always felt like she's probably devastated that her sister turned out this way and that they can't connect the way she hoped they could. And we can see that Kali is just as affected and devastated by Elle's decision to leave.
I think it's this moment where Kali realizes that she really missed out. She doesn't know how to connect with other people. And she really understands that it's going to take more than just doing what she's doing at the moment to kind of succeed and be able to go on. Something really changes in her.
The episode ends with Elle on the bus back to Hawkins, and she says 2 simple lines that hit so hard.
I'm going to my friends. I'm going home.
I love it. I love it. I don't care what anyone says or thinks. I don't care if this is too on the nose or cheesy. This always makes me cry. She's gone on this journey of self-discovery all season, and at the end of episode 7, she finally has her definition of home, and she's learned from her experiences. She has chosen Hopper, Mike, and her friends as the place where she belongs. In one of the few positive reviews of the episode I could find, Daniel Feinberg of The Hollywood Reporter gives a great breakdown of this final sequence. Then she has to choose. It's not required that we, as viewers, ever doubt her choice. We don't need to think, from our perspective, that these cut-rate punks are enticing in any way. We just have to know that they're an alternative. And then we have to be relieved when, exerting free will she's never had before, she goes back. Hawkins can't just be default. She has to have seen Paris for there to be any merit in her going back down to the farm. It's an episode that feels like it's from a different show because it's supposed to. It's the road not traveled. This is what makes her return at the end of episode 8 so much more epic and emotional. If you skip episode 7, that is what you're missing out on. People argue that you can skip the episode and miss nothing, that the only thing you won't understand is why Elle is dressed differently. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's only true if you don't really care about the full spectrum of Elle's journey and are solely fixated on the main plot in Hawkins. What you will miss is a huge piece of arguably our main character's journey, which is what led her to walking through that door. And of course, this scene is when she's finally face to face with Mike again, and you can see how much of a weight is being lifted from Mike. I was completely sold on Mike and Eleven's connection. And again, I argue that their separation all season and the journey Elle went on is why this moment is so powerful and one of the best scenes of the whole show. The Lost Sister also helped lead us to that beautiful heart-to-heart with Elle and Hopper in the finale that we briefly talked about earlier as well. They chose to tie Elle's experience with Kali into the finale by specifically calling back to Kali's advice while she's closing the gate. They want you to realize that the Lost Sister is what helped give her the power-up she needed to close it.
Well, 11 closing the gate is obviously the climactic sequence to season 2, and she's drawing from all that she's learned this season, particularly with her journey to her sister, and sort of taking all this pain that she's had and using it to close the gate. And we wanted to also have this sort of an emotional heft to it and not just be about action or just using her powers. It's really about 11 using everything that she's learned and all this hardship in her life and using that to her advantage.
One of my favorite moments of the season is immediately after the gate is closed. You feel that quiet sense of completion and relief. Another one of my absolute favorite moments right there between Elle and Hopper. And I mean, just look at this shot. It is gorgeous. I adore all of these silent shots in season 2 that allow emotional moments to breathe and simmer in your mind and just carry so much heart and weight. I know that people will still argue that it doesn't matter what the Lost Sister was trying to achieve. Everything we just talked about doesn't make it good. The execution still sucked, its tie-in to the finale is weak, and Elle could have closed the gate without Kali's advice. But according to the Duffers, the episode was intended to be a necessary building block. Our test of the episode was we tried to pull it out of the show just to make sure that we needed it, because we didn't want it in there as filler, even though some critics are accusing us of doing that. But 11's journey kind of fell apart, like the ending didn't work without it. So I was like, whether this works or not, we need this building block in here or the whole show is going to collapse. It's not going to end well. The Mind Flayer is going to take over Hawkins. That 11 storyline is overall the biggest risk we took. We're going to continue to do risks moving forward to help keep us on our toes. I didn't want her to just magically save the day. Just like Luke Skywalker, she needed to go off on her own and learn something about herself. Speaking of Luke Skywalker, most people seem to compare The Lost Sister to X-Men, but I haven't seen as many people point out the allusions to Star Wars, which the Duffer Brothers have confirmed as the inspiration for the episode.
And also, we always saw episode 7 of season 2 as sort of 11 going to her Dagobah and seeing her Yoda, which was 8, and sort of in this experience gaining some sort of enhancement of her powers that allows her to defeat this evil.
So, her especially moving the train, it's very much evokes Luke trying to pull his plane
out of the swamp.
Those references and the force choking one we talked about earlier are not where the Star Wars parallels stop. Kali showing Elle a vision of Brenner is like Luke seeing the vision of Vader. They're both father figures that they fear and must eventually face. And in the end, both Luke and 11 leave early to help their friends after sensing something is wrong. Is it a super derivative homage? Yeah. But as a Star Wars fan, I personally love how closely the episode mirrors Empire and a lot of the themes of Star Wars in general. Okay, now that we've gone over the episode, its purpose in the season, and hopefully why it does make sense, I want to address a bunch of other complaints. because I do want this to be a somewhat definitive defense of season 2 and The Lost Sister. But that means counter-arguing 8 years worth of criticisms. The placement of the episode is by far the biggest issue people have with it, and the reason so many hold a grudge. And honestly, to me, that's a fairly small reason to hate the episode so much and has nothing to do with the actual content of it. But let's break it down here. Yes, the episode disrupts the pace and avoids resolving the episode 6 cliffhanger right away, but delaying the outcome and suspending that tension is a valid storytelling technique. All of the episodes of Stranger Things were dropped at once. And that is how the season will forever exist whenever you watch it. You don't have to wait a week for the outcome. You only have to wait roughly 41 minutes, which is the length of the episode minus the end credits. It's one of the shortest episodes of the season, which is so funny because most people complain about how long it is. I can't. Not only that, Elle doesn't even meet Kali and her gang until 8 minutes and 30 seconds into the episode, which means we only spend 32 minutes with them from Elle's arrival to the top of the end credits. I was never really bothered by the cliffhanger because the resolution is coming. Trust the process. The placement of the episode was intentional and something the Duffer Brothers wanted to experiment with. We were excited about not repeating ourselves. We were excited about playing with format in the second act. We thought, let's pause for a bit and take her on this different journey before we bring her back into the action. In 2017, they were also quoted saying, "We were excited about spending a little time away. We only say it's like a movie, but it's not, so some of it is us experimenting with the form, this 8-hour, 9-hour thing. So we got excited about taking a breather before we dive back in, and it annoyed some people. It was intended to give you whiplash," adds Matt Duffer. Whether the whiplash was too strong or not, I don't know. I honestly love the placement, and I kinda commend them for playing with the format in the streaming era, breaking that expectation of instant gratification that we're so used to, like we used to experience when we watched TV week to week. I always sort of look forward to it every time I rewatch the season because it's different. It's a breath of fresh air and a nice break from the action that also helps build back into it. Plus, it does make sense to place it between episodes 6 and 8 because it takes place during the events of those episodes. But if it's really that big of an issue, since all of the episodes are at your disposal, a very simple fix for the cliffhanger issue is to switch episodes 6 and 7. I highly recommend that viewing order to anyone who is super bothered by the cliffhanger. Many people suggest that chopping up the episode and sprinkling it throughout the season would have helped the storyline go over better. If everybody apparently hates Kali and her gang so much, do we really think season 2 would have fared better if they were present in multiple episodes? If we were comfortable in Hawkins and kept cutting back to Chicago? A lot of people think they hate season 2 as it is because they only think of The Lost Sister and falsely remember it taking up the majority of the season. Making it self-contained keeps the Chicago tone and aesthetic separate from Hawkins. Isolating the episode just makes sense. Just like I'm isolating the episode in this video and dedicating a whole part to it. It's just how you have to do it, I think. But I also think having Elle isolated like that for a whole episode really helps build tension and urgency for her to return. And that's something that I feel like we would lose if it wasn't a self-contained story. Being able to really live with her in that episode really creates some anxiety, I think. That's something I really like about it. The Duffer Brothers have also denied claims that it was an attempt at a backdoor pilot.
Was there a lot of around the bottle episode or an episode in season 2, maybe a little bit of talk about that one being, that was an experiment.
Right. Yeah, that's not people's favorite episode for sure.
Was that ever intended as an actual kind of a backdoor pilot, or was it just
no, not at all. No, it was more of an excitement of going, are there other numbers out there, and what would that look like, in making it part of 11's journey.
What's so funny to me now is that the narrative and discourse surrounding The Lost Sister has recently somewhat switched from it just being flat out terrible and the worst episode in the history of television that people wish they could erase from their minds, to only being truly terrible because it was never revisited. Prior to season 3 in 2017, the Duffer Brothers were asked about Kali, and Matt Duffer was quoted saying, "It feels weird to me that we wouldn't solve her storyline. I would say chances are very high she comes back." Obviously, presumably due to the hate and backlash, they did not bring her back, even though it seems like it's something they probably planned or wanted to do. It's clear that they haven't forgotten about Kali. There's a blink and you'll miss it flashback to her in season 3, Henry's line and flashback to her again in season 4, the existence of Vecna's mind manipulation and illusion abilities. Every single time Elle says,
"Bitchin'."
Yeah, bitchin'.
Bitchin', right?
it's a callback to season 2 and The Lost Sister.
Bitchin'.
Kali's name was included as a little Easter egg on Dr. Brenner's crossword puzzle in season 4. And if you look closely, there's a really nice touch with the set design. You can see that Elle has kept the mask she wore on display in her bedroom in season 3 and season 4. As someone who clearly loves season 2, I am thinking ahead to the season and the show's legacy here. I would personally love to see Kali come back in season 5. Acknowledging the fact that she's the only other living test subject out there is something I really want them to address before everything is over. Plus, a little vindication for Kali and the Lost Sister would be great. If they gave her just a smidge more relevance in the end, it could possibly help clear season 2's name in the eyes of many fans. In 2017, when asked if Kali would appear in future episodes, Matt Duffer said, "I don't know. That's something we're still figuring out. It feels a little bit like a loose end if we don't. If 11 feels the need to seek her out, she can. It's definitely something that's a little bit open-ended that we could or could not revisit." This is the Duffers' last chance to right any wrongs, so to speak, and I really hope they take it. But hey, if they ultimately decide not to bring her back, which we'll find out in a few months, everything I've said about the episode still stands. It's a valid, self-contained storyline in season 2 that contributed significantly to Elle's character development, the lore of Hawkins' lab and its test subjects, and was intended to be the reason why Elle is strong enough to close the gate in the finale. Whether or not it translated as significant or necessary to you is another story. It clearly did not land or come across that way for the majority of viewers. But it landed for me. I don't know what to tell you. It totally worked for me. I've always enjoyed it. And I know a lot of other people out there enjoy and appreciate it as well. We are a minority, for sure, but we are out there. As a follow-up to the massive critical and commercial success of season 1, I think they did a pretty damn good job with season 2. As I've said, it stayed true to season 1, but it really took the characters and the story in so many new directions at the same time, making multiple indelible marks on the show, which really gives season 2 the edge over season 1 for me. But it also came full circle with season 1 and resolved things so perfectly and happily that the show almost could have ended here, with an eerie tease of the Mind Flayer at the end for good, mysterious measure. I honestly do think that they really did as good of a job as they possibly could have, especially considering they accomplished it in the smallest gap between seasons. I actually think that small gap was good for season 2. The first 2 seasons were essentially produced back-to-back compared to the production timeline of the following seasons. So the kids were still young enough to portray that youthful 80s childhood innocence everyone loved about season 1, and the show itself wasn't as affected or influenced by its own success just yet. Yes, the show was already a phenomenon, but they moved on to producing season 2 so quickly that there wasn't really enough time for them to stray too far from that season 1 tone. This makes the first 2 seasons feel like a self-contained story in this little bubble that is the early OG days of the show. Stranger Things 2 is the unsung season of Stranger Things. Much like an unsung hero, season 2 put in so much incredible work, as we've discussed, and in return, it receives little to no recognition for it and is largely hated, overlooked, and undervalued. As a huge fan of the season, it is honestly pretty upsetting to witness again and again and again. Now look, if the common criticisms of season 2 felt like fair and accurate assessments, I probably wouldn't get as frustrated and would just accept the fact that I happen to love something that isn't very good, I guess. But when the common statements thrown around are things like, not much happened.
Starting at dead last, we have season 2. And this is because I genuinely can't remember anything of consequence that happened from this season. They were dressed as the Ghostbusters, it was Halloween time, that's about it.
It didn't do anything new. It's just a rehash of season 1. It's forgettable. It's skippable. It's useless. It feels like the critiques do not correlate to what actually happens in the season at all. And I think a lot of that has to do with The Lost Sister. Tons of people clearly take their opinion of that episode and apply it to season 2 as a whole. That's a real shame and injustice to season 2. And an injustice to The Lost Sister, if I'm being completely honest, because in my opinion, it ain't that bad. By this point in the video, you've heard me lay out the reasons why season 2 is the strongest in my opinion. And I personally base that on how far it propelled the story. The strong relationship and character work that would change the show forever. The crucial lore deepening and world building that would prove to be incredibly foundational. I just can't fathom how everything we've talked about translates to the weakest season by far. In my mind, it translates to season 2 being strong enough to carry the following seasons on its back with the amount of development it contributed. Of course, we all have our own personal criteria for deciding these things, but there is unanimous agreement on this, and hardly any variety in the results of polls and season rankings when it comes to season 2's status among fans. The amount of hate and unfavorable comments I read about season 2 while I was diving into articles and social media in preparation for this made me incredibly self-conscious about eventually releasing this video. And the only conclusion I could come to is that the general perception of season 2 is just so warped, for a variety of reasons, which we've gone over. And I'm not sure what it will take to undo that. Because I feel like the show has highlighted season 2's importance pretty clearly and has leaned on season 2 a lot ever since. But people just keep doubling down on it being the worst. And I just don't get it. I hope and anticipate that season 5 will finally make season 2's importance crystal clear. Especially considering the Duffer Brothers have said that season 5 is inspired by season 2, particularly the finale where they're implementing some unused season 2 ideas. And the fact that the Stranger Things writers have said, I do think season 2 is consistently underrated. Highly recommend a rewatch before season 5. ... There is no way they won't be constantly referring back to all of the lore and beloved character dynamics that were established here. Everything comes back to season 2 for me personally. It is the meat and potatoes of Stranger Things. It's peak. Even the soundtrack alone is peak. Seriously, the licensed music soundtrack is insane. And we also include Thriller as an honorary season 2 song, by the way, due to its use in one of the greatest trailers for anything ever. And the original score had something a little extra to it this season. It captured and complemented the emotion so perfectly. The season 2 slander and disrespect will just never make sense to me. To slander season 2 is to slander so much of the foundation of this show. It does not compute. I don't understand how that is where we're at. That is where so much of this fan base seems to align. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's never made sense. I don't understand it. I will always love season 2. It will always be my favorite, unless season 5 absolutely blows me away. And I know I am not the only one who feels this way. We are evidently a minority, judging from the fact that season 2 usually pulls in an impressive 4% of the vote when it comes to favorite season polls. But from what I've observed over the years, those of us who love season 2, we really love it. And it kind of feels like a cozy little community of season 2 fans. I hope that once all is said and done, and the dust settles, and everyone reevaluates the show, season 2 will start to rise in the rankings a bit and gain some well-deserved recognition. But as of right now, it is generally still considered to be the worst by a huge margin, and I fear it might remain that way forever. And I am personally just so tired of it. So tired. As a big season 2 and Lost Sister fan, it has been incredibly rough out there for the last 8 years, okay? And I just finally needed to get all of this off my chest, not only for myself, but for all of my fellow season 2 fans out there. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really mean that. This was really a passion project, many years in the making. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it showcased all of the fantastic and important things season 2 contributed and how it really, truly changed the game. This video is honestly a love letter to season 2 as much as it is a defense of it. So I hope that it reaches my fellow season 2 crusaders as well. I know you guys exist. I know you're out there. I know it's not just me. Report for duty in the comments, please. And I will see you in whatever the next video is. Bye.